How many of you have felt that we are just overwhelmed with too many financial products as a matter of choice? Almost everybody. There are a few who don't feel overwhelmed, I guess. The interesting thing is that globally, especially in America, because there are far more choices over there, there's a movement now to move back to far more simplicity, not just in the matter of financial products, but also in the matter of even consumer products. And I'll just give you a little bit of glimpse on that. If you walk into a consumer durable or a sort of a mall, or to buy any consumer product, you may possibly get 40 varieties of something and 50 varieties of some jam, and people are just not able to choose and increasingly saying that this is enough. Well, we have a very peculiar problem in this country, and that problem is this, that we see that the Sensex has gone up 20 times in 20 years or even more. Steep rise in daily volumes, spread of BSE NSE into many centers, continuous rise in the number of listed companies, 24/7 coverage in 4 channels. But the fact is, and I'll share you a very interesting piece of evidence, the fact is most average persons are not part of the system. They don't feel as part, they are part of the system. Right? And fact number 1, 3 different studies, all by government committees or regulator appointed committees, show that the actual number of investors in the market are actually declining. This is very surprising. Mutual funds outflows are virtually nothing. Nobody is investing in mutual funds. As you can see, after 2007-8, when a lot of people invested, not too many people are investing in mutual funds. You might still see in 2014-15 a lot of people would start investing because the market has gone up again. For the majority of the people, money remains in the bank. This is 2 pieces of data. This is of 1991 and this is 2013, 12-13. Almost 20 years later, the share of people in bank deposits have shot up. It was 32%, it's 48% now. Why is this happening? This is happening because of the problem of choice in general, problem of choice regarding financial products, and there's some specific problems with financial products themselves, how they are produced, how they are structured, how they are sold, how we receive them, what we understand of them, what we do with them. Now, we of course love choices, right? So you want a pair of jeans, you can go for a slim fit, relaxed fit, baggy, extra baggy. You'll be stone washed, acid washed, distress, 2 different kinds of plies, etc., etc. But increasingly people are asking, is more choice the better? Obviously rational choice theory feels that everybody should have more choices, would lead to better choices and therefore more satisfied customers, but there is a limit to how much of information our mind can digest at any given point in time. And of course financial products are complex and completely different. In fact, there are a variety of studies, actual consumer studies have proved that if you reduce the number of choices, people are able to choose better. And in fact, people choose more rather than not choosing and keeping the money in the bank, which is what we are witnessing. In a test, one table had 24 varieties of jam and another had just 6. This was put in a in a top supermarket store in California. 60% stopped to buy, but only 3% bought. They couldn't choose. In the second instance, 40% stopped for the second and 30% stopped, 30% bought. So when they reduced the number of choices, the number of purchase went up. Procter & Gamble used this insight very effectively by reducing the number of head and shoulder variants from 26. They had 26 variants of head and shoulder. And here is a wonderful example that I love to give. This is a restaurant 30 kilometers from Kentucky. It serves only one thing 365 days a year. It's got only one menu and it's always full, because there are always a large number of people who would not go there, but on a given day in a year say that I don't want to choose, I just want to go here and have what they have on offer. This is a real life example of a restaurant with a single item in the menu, right? Now, not only we have too many choices in case of financial products, But this is one of my favorite ideas, which I don't think too many people talk about. My theory is that the financial products that we get from companies through distributors and financial planners and bankers or whoever, these are not finished products. These are not products that you can just buy and use the way you can use a consumer durable. You need to mix them, you need to buy more, less, buy, sell. These are not the things that you can completely assimilate and use as is, as it is, right? Now, just to give you an idea of the choices that we currently face, 3,000 actively traded stocks, 716 open-ended mutual funds, 344 life insurance products, 145 health insurance, and I've not even gone into many of the other financial products like portfolio management schemes and Mediclaim loans, FDs, etc. Variants within one category, which is just mutual fund. There are 36 equity schemes, 106 hybrid schemes, 274 debt schemes, 14 gold ETF, 49 sector funds, and I haven't even gone into liquid funds. There are about probably 900 of them, right? Now, those are just categories. Then comes brands and companies. Some people believe in UTI, some people don't believe in UTI, for instance. So there are 45 fund houses, 24 life insurance companies, 28 general insurance companies. Now, my question is, choice for whom? Is it a choice for us or for those who are producing? The fundamental premise of all of these products that come to the marketplace, especially the investment products, is designed to create more and more asset under management. Asset under management is not just expressed for the companies, let's say a life insurance company or a mutual fund company, but nowadays AUM is also expressed for large distributors. How many? You may have 300 clients and your asset under management is maybe 50 crores or 70 crores. Why? Because you make a fixed percentage on the money that you are able to collect and manage. You don't make money on expertise. You don't make money because your client is making money. Hindustan Lever would not survive if a customer comes and says, I've applied the hair and the shampoo and all my hair went away. Next day the company will just collapse. So there is a benefit on both sides. The company is producing something which the customer benefits from to a great extent. When that goes beyond a point, customers don't benefit, companies collapse. Here, the design of the business is such that you bring in a product, you get more money in. The design of the business is not that you bring in a product, customer benefits, and therefore you get more money. That third middle part of the equation doesn't exist. This is the reason, this is the only reason why companies have to want to create more and more complicated offerings. Unfortunately, such complexity is not tested. Unlike a pharmaceutical product which needs to be tested before they are brought into the marketplace, if a company like, to give an example, if Canada Robeco, for instance, they brought a product called Indigo Fund, if I remember right. So there was income in it, and dividend in it, and gold in it. That's how it is an Indigo Fund. So Indigo. Now, if you combine a debt instrument with a dividend paying stock with gold, what happens? Has anybody tested this? No. Does it perform better than an average equity fund? Does it perform better than a hybrid fund? Does it perform better than a gold fund? By getting little bit of these three, are you likely to get the worst of all three? Are you likely to be on an average level? Or are you likely to improve your performance? You will know this only when you do such thing, when you go back and test it. It's only when then you're able to do it. These things are not tested. While selling, of course, they make it appear that it's all very easy to use, not much expertise needed. And so, this is my theory, they are semi-finished, unlike a pharmaceutical product, unlike like a pill that we pop up in our mouth and our sort of pain disappears at least for a while, or even a consumer product which we can use. Second, while selling all of these things, they use certain products, are allowed to use advertising, certain products are not allowed to use advertising. Life insurance companies are allowed to advertise. But mutual funds are not allowed to advertise in the same manner with pictures and celebrities and so on and so forth. They are sold through somebody, all right? And that through is very, very important over here, because in case of consumer products, the person who's selling it to you doesn't really matter. The kirana shop, it doesn't matter whether who is selling it to you. One shop is the same as the other. It's almost like a direct communication between a company and the consumer. It's the same product available almost at the same price everywhere. The grocer doesn't matter at all. He's just making it physically available to you. Here, it matters quite a bit. There are 600 stockbrokers. There are about 1,000 financial planners, 20,000 supposedly active independent financial advisors. Nobody has counted them. This is what the number that industry talks about. Over 3 million insurance agents, 25-30 banks, private banks, and a lot of smaller banks which are now coming in to do what is called selling of wealth management products through relationship managers. There are at least 4 websites where you can just compare, click and buy things like Policy Bazaar. They're very, very active. Once again, all this choice that you have in front of you, is it designed for you or is it designed for them? Now, fundamental to all of this is more the channel, the more the transaction volume, the more is the income for the channel. That's the fundamental premise, and the companies, the financial products companies, encourage all of them to do that. Brokers will call you to buy and sell, which is how they make the money in commissions and so on. There is another element in all this, the media. Unlike in the Western countries, now of course it's coming now, unlike in the Western countries, the media here is allowed to comment on financial products. They're supposed to, they can stand up, they can write in Economic Times that in the front page on a given day in a bull market, they can write saying this is a stock that a lot of people are buying and the stock goes up. Or they can broadcast in CNBC, they can call in an expert, ask pointed questions and get an answer by which they can influence the stock. So we have 6 financial papers, 7 to 8 magazines, business channels and regional publications. Once again, the choice is yours or theirs. The media, remember, is always driven by what is popular. So if there is an interest in a given financial product, because the market is moving in that direction, they'll write about that. They were not going to write about anything else. They have a fundamental interest in catering to what is popular. They're all the prisoners of a simple advertising driven system. When ULIPs are very popular, there will be advertisement for ULIPs and they will write about ULIPs. And the same is true for IPOs and NFOs. Often an interested party, I don't want to go too much into that. The truth of what they write, who knows? There is no testing, there is no collation, and finally, who remembers that somebody has written something 3 years ago and it turned out to be wrong? Tomorrow is another day. Tomorrow is another edition of the paper. Now, ask yourself, is the role of media to help you grow your wealth? Certainly not. The role of the media is only to increase its own circulation and increase its own ad revenues. That is the fundamental business of theirs. Now, I have just one slide on this, and I would want you to, if there's one slide in this entire presentation you have to think about, please think about this, because this is really very, very important to me, and I think everybody must think about this. Now, investment products are never standalone like a washing machine or even like a consumer product like a shampoo or whatever. They are all interdependent. Now, if Canara Robeco, to take that example that I described, brings a product like Indigo to the market, does the company also tell you how much in that fund too you should be investing? Is there anybody who tells you that? Because here is a product which is new. So you may have existing list of products, you may have a certain amount of savings. Just think of an average saver who's probably saving 30,000 rupees a month. Now this product comes into the marketplace. Take a real life example. How much he or she should put into that fund? 5,000, 10,000, 15,000? Should she pull out some money from the bank and put 50,000? What is the process by which you will decide that so much of money invested is correct. Secondly, what is the role of this product vis-a-vis you already have invested in? Maybe you have 5 equity mutual funds, you have some money in bank FD, maybe you have an FMP, you have some gold ETF. Now where will you fit this in? Are you going to sell something and buy additionally in this? Are you going to buy only what you have as a surplus in the bank? This is very, very important, because investment returns are a function of two things. Investment returns are a function of the price we pay and the amount we invest in. If I tell you buy this stock, for instance, tomorrow I tell you, let's say Syndicate Bank is going to go up, all right? It goes up. Suppose it goes up 30% over the next 6 months. Okay? If you buy 100 shares, you have a certain amount of return. Somebody buys 500 shares, obviously his returns are much more. If I don't tell you whether you should be buying 100 shares or 500 shares, depend on your overall financial position, it makes no sense at all to just give you the name of a stock. This is why mutual funds have a weightage. If you open any of the mutual fund companies' investment profile, they'll say they would have invested, let's say 7.28% in TCS. Why is that 7.28% and not 1%? Secondly, even if a mutual fund today knows that a very good quality mid-cap stock is very excellent, it's going to be a great performer, it may not just not buy it at all. It might surprise you to know that a mid-cap stock that you can buy, even if HDFC mutual fund thinks that the decision is correct, that the stock is worth buying, they will not buy it. The reason they will not buy is because they are fully invested, and they think they can put only 1% of the money in that stock, and that stock, putting 1% in the stock, does not make any sense to them, because that is not going to change the overall investment performance of the rest 99% of the portfolio, which is what is going to determine the returns. So how much and in what proportion is absolutely the key thing in investment returns, and nobody tells you this. This is what is called, at a larger level, this is what is called asset allocation. It's a big term, but I would assume that every single person who wants to invest anything anywhere would have to confront this at the very first step. Before you sign your form, how much you will ask, right? You ask yourself, you ask your friend, you ask your financial planner, and what is the basis for determining how much? Suppose you have 5 lakhs in the bank, and here you have 30,000, 5 lakhs is an investment in your FD, 30,000 in your savings account, and you have maybe 7.5 lakhs of mutual fund somewhere in equity fund. I'm just giving an example, something in PPF and so on. Now here is a new fund that has come. How much are you going to invest in that? Where is that information? Where is that handholding? So my point in all of these things is to make your life absolutely fundamentally simple by cutting out a lot of things that you don't need. There are a large number of things you need, the large number of things you don't need, and only a few things that you need. And one of the first things that you must remember, and Indians especially, because in this country inflation is very high, because what you invest in over the next 5 years, 7 years, 10 years is going to be on an inflation adjusted basis. Our real inflation in our lives is not 7%, is not 6%, is not 5%. Urban inflation for us, where we send children to good quality schools, if you have a bypass, we want to go to a good hospital. For us in urban area, the inflation is in double digits no matter what the government says or does. If a bank is lending out, if the bank is giving an interest of 8% or 8.5%, and it's only for a brief period that Indian banks in 2003-04 period were giving much lower interest. On an average, they have been giving an interest of 7.5%, 8%. It basically means that actual inflation is always 2% more than that. Banks will always pay you lower than the actual rate of inflation. They lend at 11, 12%, 13%, 14%. That is the rate at which they lend. Businesses borrow at that rate. All right. The government is always in a major fiscal deficit. This government or any other government just spends money with as if there is no tomorrow, because they think they can go and borrow from the market. Their rate of spending, the government's interest expenditure and the government's borrowing program sets a benchmark rate of interest. Interest rates is not going to be lower than this, and that sets the benchmark for inflation. It's not going to be lower than this. Just to show you a chart, if you think that you're going to have 1 crore of rupees after 30 years, all right, and if inflation is double digits, 10%, your real value of the money is only 4,38,000 30 years later. Okay, please remember this. So you need to be investing in products which can beat this high inflation that India suffers from, and India will continue to suffer from because of our fiscal situation. I forgot to put it. This is a lower inflation rate. This is 7% and this is 10%. So the inflation is 7%. You get a little more money. Inflation is higher, which is 10%. I forgot to put that 7 in. So I prefer to look at this because this is going to be your actual inflation, barring a miracle in the way the government is run. Okay. Now, longevity is increasing. You walk into any social get-together, you'll see a large number of 80-year-olds, fully fit. Some of them have replaced their knee and going on holidays. So longevity is increasing. You must invest in products that beat inflation over a long period of time. This is very, very crucial. In another way, I'll come back to, I'll explain why this inflation we should take advantage of, use it for our advantage rather than being hit by this. Now, second thing you must be aware of is the risk for financial products. This is something which nobody talks about and nobody asks. Human mind is such that we only want to know the upside. So, kitna deti hai? Like we ask about cars, we want to know how much return can we get about a given financial product. All the smartest of the investors across the world, if you pitch a product to them, they first start thinking how much I can lose. They look at it exactly the opposite way. So, risk, the academics tell us risk is volatility. How much a stock goes up and down, or how much a bond prices can go up and down, etc. That is completely irrelevant to us. Actually, it may be a nice academic definition to do nice models. For us, risk is only one thing, which is chance of capital loss, chance of losing money. Now, stocks and equity funds can fall very, very sharply if you buy them at the wrong time. Fixed income, what is the risk? If you hold a lot of money in the bank, as Indians are doing, as I showed you in the first pie chart, the money is eaten up by inflation as I described. Real estate risk, like stocks, can fall very sharply, would not seem so, because for the last 5-7 years real estate has just not fallen, not even after the financial crisis of 2008. For a few months the prices were soft and they started moving up again, and but it has happened. Real estate prices have for a long time in the 90s, from 92 onwards, after they reached the peak, have been stagnant or have actually fallen, which I have personally seen. Between 92 and 2005, real estate prices in India's prime real estate area, which is Nariman Point, were actually down, not inflation adjusted basis. Actual basis, it was down from 10,000 to 8,500. Gold is a speculative bet. According to me, everybody needs gold. Just buy physical gold and keep it. Don't try to buy gold ETF. Don't think that a substantial chunk of the money should be in gold, because gold prices don't go up significantly over the long term. And in any case, we do not know why gold prices go up, because gold prices are not determined by us. It is determined in dollar terms by international markets because of a variety of factors, 5 key factors, which I'm not going into it now. But for us, it's mainly determined by the strength and weakness of rupee. If, as I'm saying, if for some reason the rupee strengthens and international prices of the gold falls, both put together will lead to a sharp fall in gold prices for us. If the opposite happens, which is what we saw in the last 5-7 years, which is international prices go up and the rupee becomes weaker and weaker, our price of gold will keep going up. This is not a game that an average person would like to play. There are far better, riskier, more speculative, more rewarding games you can play than play the speculative bet of gold. If you invest in insurance, what is the risk? The biggest risk is the fact that when the time comes to get your claim, for some reason or the other, your claim is not met. That is a hidden risk. So a lot of it is in your hand. It's not an objective risk. It's a very, very subjective risk, which means make your declarations correctly, which is a completely different chapter. But people's claims are not met for a variety of reasons, and these are the things that we get to know in our insurance helpline, and it's a very, very serious thing. On the investment part, insurance companies charge a lot of costs, including all the costs of Sachin Tendulkar and Amitabh Bachchan that we see on the television screen. All those costs are taken out of your pocket, which means your returns would be effectively lower. Returns in real life. This is very, very, very important, because this sets a parameter, this sets the horizons within which your investment returns will be defined. If anything is extraordinarily more or less, it's something that you should worry about. Sensex has been up by around 14% post-tax in 20 years. I'll spend a little more time trying to convince you that you should be investing in stocks or in equity mutual funds, and I have an economic basis for that. I don't have a stock market basis for that, and I'll explain that a little later. Bank FDs. In 1996, when interest rates were very high, when inflation was very high, when the great Manmohan Singh was a finance minister and Rangarajan was the RBI governor, banks were paying as much as 12% in FD. Now, if your banks pay 12%, an economy is not going to survive in that state for too long, because banks pay you 12%, which means add to the 5% of their spread, they're going to charge 17-18% to corporates. If companies pay 17-18% interest cost, their business is not going to grow, their business is going to shrink. If the business shrinks over a period of time, the banks will not recover the money, and then exactly what happened in 2004, it's pure economic cycle. If you take it too far, it's just going to go down. Everybody was shrinking, the businesses were down, and therefore there was no demand for money, which is why by the time the interest rate cycle bottomed out in 2004, the banks were paying only about 5% or so. By the way, if you ever see banks paying 5-6% as an interest rate, that would be the best time to buy stocks, because then, which means that the next major stock cycle is just around the corner. Corporate deposits, always about 2 to 3% or sometimes even 4% if companies which are in distress, over and above what the banks pay. So corporate deposits, when banks were paying 18%, there were some companies paying as much as 20%. That is a certain red flag. If any company is paying 20% interest as corporate deposit, which is unsecured, which basically means that you're not going to get your money back. It is just getting the money in for some other reason, just to sort of paper over some other problem it has. Well, all the way down to 8% before tax. Now, I have deliberately mentioned they are before tax because these are all taxed income, as opposed to a long-term income from equity mutual funds on which there is no tax, or even long-term capital gains from buying and selling stocks over 1 year on which there is no tax. The difference between a post-tax return of Sensex and a post-tax return on back FD is just so huge that it is just too compelling not to think of investing in an equity product for the long term. Unit-linked insurance plans, nobody talks these days because they want earned such a terrible name for themselves, trying to do real hard sell in 2005, 6, 7, 8, and people lost a lot of money. In every room, you would find 4 or 5 people who would say, "Oh, I invested in this ULIP, and my value is just so little." It baffles us to see that even theoretically calculating the costs and upfront charges and all of that, it baffles us to see why would the net value net asset value just not grow or just decline over 5 years, 6 years. These are the things that we get to know in our insurance helpline, which basically means that insurance companies have so many hidden charges, not even stated upfront, it is not even possible to calculate. It's only when you invest there and you not get the return that you realize. So 6 to 8% post-tax. ULIPs also qualify for certain tax benefits. So I said 6 to 8%, but according to me, it is going to be even lower than that. It will not be 6 to 8% post-tax. Traditional insurance plans like a whole life plan, and there are 3-4 of the endowment and all of that. That is the worst kind of investment that anybody could make. I don't know how many of you have invested. It's the worst kind of investment you can make, for the simple reason that your entire money is put into debt. The debt that you wanted to, the debt that you're running away from maybe is all, you're getting it all if you invest in any of those traditional plans. They don't want to invest in risky, so they will go and invest in a government bond. The government bond right now in a good time is about 8.74%. And then you reduce the cost. If LIC has a cost of 1.5%, that is going to be a return. Then there are further charges. So it's a terrible idea to do that. In fact, in one of our research, which Raj has done, he pointed out that one HDFC Life product, I think these products keep going out. So it's an old product, but he calculated, and we did a cover story on that, an HDFC Life traditional insurance product would give you 2%. We calculated. It was just so astounding even to us. Gold, as I said, compounded 9% for 20 years, which is actual data over the last 20 years, which include the really golden period for gold from 1991 right up to last year in April till March, April, I think, when gold prices were some, I don't know, about 32,000 or so. It was an incredible run for gold over the last 20 years. During which over, as I said, from 91 all the way to almost 13-14 years of this was really a fantastic run for gold. Now, whether it's going to continue or not, we don't know. Is there any basis for figuring out what gold prices would do? We don't know. If you ask anybody at 28,000 or 29,000 if the gold price is high or low or fully valued, there's no way of knowing, because gold can't be valued. The only thing we know is that gold prices are determined by 4 or 5 international factors, including US interest rate, including buying and selling by central banks, which is reduced right now. This was a major factor in the 90s and 80s, in the 80s, including a lot of money moving into gold ETF, which is a new thing that has happened. So no one period of gold, no 10-year period of gold is comparable to another 10-year period of gold. What gold was in the 30s is different from what gold was in the 60s, from what gold was in the 70s when it became freely traded commodity, until that was controlled by the US government, from what it was 80s and 90s. One 10-year period is completely different from another 10-year period, because there are different players, different motivations, different reasons for the prices going up and down. For us, of course, there's always this one factor: the rupee is going to get weaker, so we are going to benefit from the weaker rupee prices. Now, key thing, as I mentioned, is there must be some way of creating an asset allocation formula. I mean, this is a mouthful, but it essentially means very simply that how much to put in how much to put in bank FD, how much you should put in, let's say, a tax-free bond, how much you should put in equity mutual funds, and so on. Bearing in mind a simple principle that if you want higher returns, products which give higher returns also carry higher risk. This is a fundamental principle of finance. And if you want safety of returns, necessarily the returns would be a little lower. You cannot have high returns from a safe product. That is simply a contradiction in terms of. So the way to go about it, people say, is mix safety with returns, all right? And the mix depends on your profile and when you need the money. I'll explain this, but before that I'll tell you a very fascinating story. And the story is of a gentleman called Harry Markowitz. In 1950 he was working for Rand Corporation, and he was working on what the finance people call capital asset pricing formula. It is basically this: how much to mix with what. So, for instance, he found out that if you put too much money in safe products, your returns would be low. If you put too much money in high return products, you're taking too much of risk. So, can we do this mixing in a manner to get what he's called it an optimum return? So he did some computer applications, some linear programming applications by which he did a curve by which from safety you're going to risk, from low return you're going to high return, and somewhere along the curve this is the right point. So it could be 37% fixed income and 63% equity, just giving an example. So that proportion he worked out, fixed income and equity, that alone. So he did a paper, and he was much praised. Much later, around 20-30 years later, he got a Nobel Prize for it, all right, for discovering what is called an efficient frontier, this mix. Somebody asked him, so what did you do? You were the one who discovered this. He said, I felt that if I am too low in the curve, I might miss out on the equity, and if I'm too high on the curve, who knows, the market may fall. So I did 50-50. The man who discovered efficient frontier himself closed his eyes and put equal amount of money in bond and in equity. Okay? But of course the world has moved much further. There are far better ways of allocating, and you will find a lot of theory around this. Nothing is needed. My attempt to simplify financial life not just includes choosing the right products, but choosing a right allocation based on a completely two different parameters. And the parameters are your profile, which essentially means how old are you and what kind of dependence you have. That's one way of doing it. The other is, when do you need the money? So a lot of people in any of these programs that we do, they come and ask us, I have 2 lakhs to invest, and I want to invest over the next and I need the money over the course of next 3-4 years, right? So having done just thousands of man-hours of research on all of this, our answers are very easy. We say, you need anything less than 5 years, put the money in fixed income. Look at your taxability, which means if you are in a 30% tax bracket, try and get an FMP or a tax-free bond or something like that. But what about equity funds? So our research says that if you don't know how to time the market, if you're just going to put 2 lakhs today in equity market, there are at least 15 to 17% chance of you losing money over the next 5 years. You just buy and hold. Okay, this is what the past data talks about. Why would you want to take a chance? So when you need the money is a crucial factor. I'll just explain that a little bit. But before that, the profile and age dependency. We use this kind of, I'll explain where we use this, but roughly speaking, now this is fixed deposits, essentially that is fixed income. So I put FD because that's an easy thing for most people to understand. But if you are in a certain higher tax bracket, then you wouldn't want to put too much money in bank fixed deposits. You would want to put money in more tax efficient instruments like a tax-free bond, for instance. So just an example, all right? Most people internationally, and a lot of things that we do here are borrowed from the US. So somebody who's got a little idea of financial planning, has been reading about all this, would certainly suddenly ask me, but what about risk appetite? Now, risk appetite, as I mentioned just a few days ago, is one of the most abused 2 words in personal finance. Okay? And there are lots of studies to say that a person who declares, self-declared high risk appetite at a certain point in the market would suddenly become extremely risk averse if the market climate changes. Risk appetite has nothing to do with what you think is your risk appetite. Risk appetite is tested only when you are actually asked to put money in a given market climate, in a given product. And you will change your mind. Tomorrow when the market is falling, you will bravely say, I have risk appetite earlier. When the market starts falling, you say, no, I don't have a risk appetite. I am okay with banking. So the reason this word risk appetite has been invented. Like a lot of things that Americans do, they try to pass the buck onto you. You fill it up. You declare risk appetite. You'd be surprised to know there is something called patient democracy in the US now. They're saying you choose your manner of treatment. And in fact, 67% of the people in a survey said they would like to choose the manner of the treatment if they had cancer. And when they actually had cancer, that figure dramatically dropped to 5%. They don't want to choose. They want the doctor to choose. So the Americans have gone to such extreme of passing the buck. You choose. You said you are aggressive. That's why I gave you an 85% allocation. Now you don't cry. Now, according to me, that is shirking responsibility. That is putting the responsibility back on the saver who is not supposed to know any of these. Alright? So, I personally feel that whoever is advising has to take responsibility, has to do enough of hard work, has to do enough of back testing to actually come up and give one number. Put 85% of your savings, put 60% of your savings or whatever that is. So based on our research, given your profile of dependence or no dependence, this is the kind of asset allocation we suggest. By period, I've already mentioned this. 0 to 3 years capital has to be protected. Value should not fluctuate because you would need the money. 3 to 5 years, you can start to mix some of the risky products and safe products. That's what I said. 15 to 17% of chance of losing money, but 85% to 83% of chance of actually making money. So then you decide, you start putting a little bit of money. Above 5 years, equities definitely make tremendous amount of sense, and that's where your money should be for any long-term investment. Now, I mentioned some of the products beat inflation, some don't. Now, here is a quick list of products according to us which beat inflation and which don't. I've already mentioned this. Real estate does not give returns are volatile. The point that I did not mention and I would like to mention over here is that it is impossible to arrive at the returns of any financial product or any product for that matter if you do not have a long enough history of being able to analyze its returns. It's not a question of what I think, it's not a question of what you think, it's not a question of what your cousin got when he or she bought in 2003 in Pune. People have stories. Everybody has stories, and stories don't make for investment analysis. The only thing that can create a robust basis for investment analysis is objective data. If you can give me data of all the similar flats in Bandra of the last 30 years, what is called a time series, I'll be able to look at the data and I'll be able to say, yes, if you have invested in a place like Bandra in a 2-bedroom apartment, then your expected average return is likely to be this. But that data does not exist. One of the real estate persons was doing a presentation here in Moneylife Foundation about 2 years ago, and he had data saying that some South Mumbai real estate has gone up 25%. All right. Now, that data did not make any sense to me, because what is South Mumbai? What are you comparing? You always have to compare like and like. You can compare Sensex of 2003 with Sensex of 2008. There is some merit in comparing because you're comparing like and like. You can't really compare a flat in Gamdevi to that of Nepean Sea Road to that of Federal Road and so on. They're all different locations, and you need to have long enough data. In fact, the serious researchers in the US saying that even 30 years of data is not enough, because that does not capture everything that happens in the market and the economy to be able to give you a robust basis. The point I was trying to make is that for the large number of people who claim to have made money in real estate, an equally large number would keep quiet, because who wants to admit that they've been cheated by builders, bought and sold at the wrong time, bought at such high prices that there is no appreciation. This is the worst part. And huge costs, which is brokerage, registration, stamp duty and maintenance. If you add up all that, then only you know what is your investment return. Without adding that, just looking at an economic times story saying that such and such flat has been sold at such and such prices is of absolutely no value at all. I've covered all this. Insurance is an investment. The mechanism of insurance is very simple. It offers you a life cover and invests your money as premium. And this is not term plan, everything other than term plan. This is the mechanism. Which is why we do not advocate this. We say buy a term plan. Do not use insurance as a vehicle for investment. A pure term plan, especially now an online term plan, is an incredible value for money. I don't know how long this is going to continue, but because new private players like Religare and all of them have come, they want to take away a market share. So make the effort. It's a little difficult. Make the effort to get an online term plan if you haven't got any. And there is absolutely no reason to fall for this racket of insurance companies which takes your money, offers you a life cover and invests on your behalf. Do not let them invest on your behalf. Invest your own money. That brings us to stocks and equity funds that you should be having in your portfolio. They are extremely volatile. People hate volatility. Human beings always want certainty. Nobody wants unpredictability. Everybody says that give me something which doesn't go up and down, which gives me a guaranteed return, which gives me a smooth return. It can be a little lower, that's fine. I don't think that's the right approach, because there is a way of dealing with volatility. But first, why is it that Sensex stocks, despite all the changes that have been done in this composition of Sensex, why is it that the Sensex stocks have actually delivered 14% compounded annual return over the last 20 years? Why is it that this is the same story in any country which has democracy and which has a rule of law which allows companies to thrive and prosper? The fundamental reason is this, that these are some of the best companies. They are not the best, but these are some of the best chosen, well-chosen companies. There's a TCS in that, there's a Hindustan Lever in that, and so on. Now, these companies are the strongest animals in the jungle. Okay? They are able to hire, they are able to put in the best possible processes. They're driven like a machine. They have quarterly targets. They have only one objective, is to excel and make money. You want to be part of that. You don't want to be part of anything else. You don't want to be part of the weak players in the jungle. You want to ride on the shoulders of the strongest players. Now here is how it plays out in an inflationary situation. If inflation is 9% and 10% and we have to guard against that, it is the strongest companies which will be able to deal with that inflation far better than you would be able to do, or anybody else will be able to. If inflation is hitting Hindustan Lever, it's going to cut costs after a point. It will say raise prices, and it is able to raise prices to a great extent. Same thing happens to a pharmaceutical company. In fact, today in Sensex, some of the companies are not just earning money from India, but they have another new element of support, which is they are earning money in dollars. And there are pharmaceutical companies, there are software companies in Sensex. All of these companies not only are driven very well, they have a good set of managers, they're recruiting the best, and they have an internal system of doing better and better every quarter and every year, but they're also getting a windfall, because the moment the rupee weakens, they get an extra bit of money. 5%, 7% is a guaranteed weakness of Indian rupee, barring a miracle of sorts in the way this country is governed. So quite apart from any of their profits, they are definitely going to get that lift. It won't come in a smooth manner to them. Rupee is checked after a point, and suddenly boom, it becomes weaker. So there's a windfall for those 2-3 quarters. You're not playing for those 2-3 quarters. You are playing for two simple things. These are excellent companies, and excellent companies are the best form of value creating organizations. Not cooperatives, not government companies, not government departments. No other organization is run with a clear profit motive to create more value, except well-run private sector companies, if they are allowed to run well. Now, everybody asks, like a lot of questions are, is it a good time to buy? What is the right time to buy? I'm afraid we have some idea on what is a good time to buy, but it's a wrong thing to try and do. There are a lot of times people write it on a television screen. Don't try it at home. These are stunts that you see on the screen. That's great to watch. But to try and time a buying, it's very easy. I can tell you what to do. But you will be so disappointed that you will not either believe me, nor will you do it. All right? I'll tell you what to do. You'll have to probably wait for 5 years to come to that point, but you're going to make 200% from that point onwards. BSE website lists the Sensex P. It's based on recent 4 quarters of P. If you ever find that P is somewhere below 13, it has happened twice, in 2003 and 2008. So 5 years apart. Next time I don't know when it's going to happen. If you buy these stocks, when you see that B, it's publicly available. You don't have to ask me or anybody else. Just keep a watch on that. When you see that P below 13, sell your house and buy all the stocks. You're going to make 300%. There's no doubt about that. So you will say, "Iska kya matlab hai? I mean, I can't do anything tomorrow with this." All right. Finally, there are a whole lot of things to avoid. Portfolio management schemes. We did a cover story with a great deal of difficulty. This data is not available. We had to file. We first initially persuaded SEBI to put out this data. They were not putting up this data. We had to file an RTI. They wouldn't. They gave a wrong reply. We went on appeal. Then they forced people to start putting up this data. We only got a few months of data, and eventually I think they're now we've lost interest because we can't keep fighting anymore on this. But not before we've done a complete analysis of portfolio management schemes. We found just 2 companies which had given decent returns. You can, Motilal Oswal can talk about value investing, and XYZ can talk about anything, but just 2 small-sized brokers with genuine intent and skill we found. One is Quantum of Ajit Dayal and one is Parag Parikh. If you are ever intending to put money in PMS, maybe you should consider these 2 alone, as long as these 2 people are running it. Ultimately, Parag Parikh, he's now got a fund also, so I don't know whether he's going to still run the PMS. He's closed. That's right. So any of the other things, art funds, commodity trading, forex trading, private equity, all these are going to give you either a loss or such little return because of the costs and poor skills of those who are running these, that you're not going to make any money. These are really meant for finance professionals because they tend to think that they're good at spotting all of these opportunities and they can get in and out. They actually lose money also, but let them try. And if you ever are tempted to any of these, write it down somewhere. And 90% in this room are male, so please share that information with your wife, that this is what I'm going to put into it, and tell yourself, I'm going to lose this. All right? It's only then you put the money over there. So you are prepared. And one of the things that behavioral theorists say that is talk about what is called a pre-commitment. So similarly, you have to decide on, I don't mind losing 3 lakhs rupees in this. The moment you tell yourself or your wife, you say, are you mad? Put only 50,000. So you become much more realistic in terms of your expectation. Now, you asked, or the other people asked, how to do it. Now, here is a little bit of a bad news. What we share is what we do. And we do a lot of work, we invest a lot of time and effort. But if anybody in the audience says that, hey, I can do it myself, please go ahead and do it. I just want to share with you the effort it takes and the cost that it involves. That's all. I'm not saying you can't do it, but I just wanted to make you aware of what it is. If you wish to invest in mutual fund, please invest in a mutual fund. Database costs 90,000 a year. We invest that money. 75,000 plus 12.6% taxes. Now, you can still go to money control and do, there's a drop down, you can go to value research and do that. But you can do only on a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year kind of returns. It's not the best. So if you really want to give it your best shot, this is a good option. Otherwise, you can do it through value research. If somebody is really serious about investing in stocks, unlike money control or value research in mutual fund, there is no database publicly available for you to use. There is a website which I keep referring to called screener.in, S-C-R-E-E-N-E-R, screener.in. They have ready-made lists. Screener.in, S-C-R-E-E-N-E-R.in, run by a guy called Ayush Mittal. I have great regards for him. He's just recently been featured in a magazine. He's fantastic. So he gives you ready-made screens, which means low PE stocks. You click on that, you'll get a list of low PE stocks and so on and so forth. But any serious effort to do any research, you need a database. Unfortunately, CMI has this prowess database which costs that kind of money. Having got these two tools, or at least one other tools, which is the second one, is not enough, because what are you going to do with a list of companies and all the financial data? You need to have a method, and there are a variety of methods to invest in stocks. There are plenty of ways in which you can make money. You have to find your own method which suits your personality, your time horizon, your objective. Screener.in lists a large number of these ready-made methods. You can just pick one of them and use the same method to use over here. Having decided that this is a good method, Screener only gives a list, or you will read somewhere on, or you will use a method. It is very, very important for you to test this, how it has worked under different market conditions. We use a method which we have gone and tested on random at different market situations. For instance, we said, what if we were in December 2007, an index was 22,000 and 15 days later about to crash and hit a lower circuit. So suppose we are on 31st December 2007. We have the data up to September, and what would we have chosen at that stage, at that kind of a market condition? Would we have made blunders in choosing stocks which would have gone down very, very sharply, or not? So we do these kind of tests. What would we have done if we were in a low interest situation? What would we have done in May 2004 or January 2004 when the market was headed for a big fall after the election? So all of these situations need to be tested at different times, because the market is an unpredictable animal. It moves in a certain manner. As somebody asked me whether this returns, sales and profits get reflected. Yes, it does get reflected for 60, 70, 75% of the time, and then boom, it just goes beyond that, or it goes far below that, and it takes time to come back to normal. So if this is the normal, it will do that normal only about, let's say, 70% of the time. If you're caught in the storm, up or down, above a certain norm it is greed, below that it is really despair and anguish, then you should have a pre-committed, preordained strategy. Now, what would I do if this had happened? In fact, I'll share a very fascinating story with you. This is one of the largest investors in the world, called Ray Dalio. He was so worried that all this money pumping that US Federal Reserve has been doing for the last 4 or 5 years would lead to hyperinflation, that he actually found out old German papers of First World War and before Second World War, and read through all that hyperinflation kind of. He made his team read those papers and put his mind in that kind of situation. What would he do if he was facing a headline where America or any other country would be facing a hyperinflation? So he actually put through that kind of a mental situation. This is to the extent that they do in terms of preparing themselves. Then spend time. As I said, there is a time to buy, of course, if you want to know. Quite apart from those extremes that I talked about, there is you can optimize your returns, you can increase your returns dramatically, definitely by timing, if that's what you want to do. You need to develop a realistic expectation based on historical returns. If something is giving you fantastic returns over a short period of time, you should be already mentally prepared that no, this is not what happened in the past, there's something unusual happening here. Instead of getting sucked into the present, you should be fully alive in the past such situations that this has happened, so that even if you don't sell, you at least don't buy anymore in a market that is shooting up and leading to unrealistic returns. Develop a method for creating the right mix of assets and sub-asset classes. This is not too difficult. It's basically follow the formula that I mentioned earlier. Sub-asset class is only designed to improve or to optimize your post-tax return. So if you're in a 30% tax-paying bracket, make sure that you invest in the fixed income part of the product, where you don't pay too much of tax on the interest that you get. And finally, cut out every single other influence. You would be surprised to know, even for a prepared mind, how easy it is to just look at the television screen and completely forget all that you prepared your mind for, or hear somebody say something and say, hey, this is correct, this sounds very reasonable, and dump everything that you prepared your mind for. This happens even to us, even at this stage. So this is extremely important, is to ensure that you cut out all kinds of other influences, because this is you. This is what you do for yourself, and this is well tested. We try and do that all by ourselves. So this is the end of the presentation.